Hey everybody, this is Chuck Marone with Strong Towns. I want to talk to you a little bit today about a story out of Michigan about their roads and their road condition. And it follows the same old line we see over and over. So let me just walk you through this. Basically, the story says, hey, good news. Road conditions in Michigan are improving. And by improving, they mean 1/3 of the state's roads are in poor condition, which is an improvement over what it is. 1 out of 3 roads miles are in poor condition. That's looking up. Things are looking good. 45% of local roads, so almost half of local roads, are in poor condition. But again, this is improving. Why is it improving? Well, it's improving because the state took out $3.5 billion of spending, debt. They got federal stimulus money, and they were able to go out and do, in a sense, a surge in repairs. So they went out and did a whole bunch of repairs, and they got it to a point where, 1/3 of the state's roadways are in poor condition. But the report goes on to say, consider this like the high water mark, right? Consider this the peak, because at this point, it's just going to get worse. And it's going to get a lot worse. And it's going to get a lot worse probably pretty quickly, because we don't have any money to maintain the roads that we've built. The interesting thing is that, as the story goes on, you start to see, like, this is basically newsprint places running the press release from the American Society of Civil Engineers. American Society of Civil Engineers does their annual reports. They say, here's, you get a D or a D minus or what have you on the state of your infrastructure. The way you can tell that this is coming from this kind of road building propaganda machine is when they start to get into the analysis of, like, well, what do we do about this? What do we do about the fact that 1 out of 3 miles we have is in poor condition? What do we do about the fact that that's going to get worse? What do we do about the fact that, we are spending most of our transportation money that we get in on debt service? What do we do? And the answer is, well, we need more money, right? We need a dedicated fund. We need to increase taxes. We need, more spending out of the general fund. This is ludicrous. I mean, the governor of Michigan is adding 240 million. I can't remember the exact, somewhere around that amount, 240 million, like $250 million. Adding that to the budget for next year, just for transportation, right? You're like, ooh, that's a lot of money. And that sounds like that'll make a big dent. No, right off the bat, half of it is going to debt service, right? It's not going to fix a single road. Not a single foot of road will be fixed by it. It's just paying debt on past projects, debt on past things that we've spent money on. That's all that money goes to. The amazing thing about Michigan is that they're still building new lanes, right? They're still building new lane miles. They're still adding infrastructure, even though they have this massive infrastructure deficit. Here's the reality. And this is, for Michigan, it's for Minnesota, where I am, it's for California, it's for Texas. What the reality is that there's no amount of tax increase. There's no amount of spending cut. There's no amount of debt that we can take on or growth that we can induce that's going to pay to maintain all the miles that we've built. We will never do it, right? We have built more lane miles than we care to maintain. And I say that, it is technically possible. If we said we're not going to do anything else but maintain infrastructure, we're just going to maintain highways, we're going to raise taxes up to the point that would mean, in theory, we could do that. The reality is nobody's going to cut schools, nobody's going to cut police, nobody's going to cut all these other things to maintain road miles. So we're just going to accept junkier and junkier and junkier roads until we finally give up on them, right? There is no amount of money. Here's how you know These reports, in a sense, are industry propaganda. And I say industry propaganda, I think the numbers are real. Like a third of the roads are in poor condition. I think that is real. It's probably an underestimate, actually. But, those numbers make sense to me. But the rest of the report, the idea that the way we address this is to get more funding and to get a dedicated funding source and to start taxing electric vehicles, and you get this whole length of propaganda. The question is never asked, well, how much would we have to actually raise to maintain this stuff? If we were going to get A's and B's across the board, if we were actually not going to have roads in poor condition, but roads in fair condition or good condition, how much money would that take? What would the gas tax need to be? What would the amount we spent annually need to be? And when the answer comes out as some exorbitant number, and trust me, there have been a handful of places where this question's been asked, and the number is always insane, it's bizarre. When the number comes out and it would be bizarre, people say, well, we're not going to do that, right? That's never going to happen. That is when we're starting to get to the good question. Because the good question is, what then? What then? At Strongtowns, one of our priority campaigns is no highway expansions. End highway expansions. And that is less of a commentary on highway expansions themselves, as it is a commentary on the fact that we just have no credible plan to maintain this vast network of roadways that we have built. We have no credible plan. And so the more we go on this path without a credible plan, the more we go on just building, pretending that someday there'll be a dedicated funding source, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the poorer condition our roadways are going to be, the more we're going to be frustrated with it, and the more things are just going to go bad. No new highway expansions. Let's start there. Let's not build any more. And then let's take some time and figure out how we're going to maintain all this stuff that we build. Because the reality is no policymaker has any idea how.